Halsey, there was a question about where everyone was, and they decided the only people in church were the ones that couldn't afford the gas to go up north. It wasn't quite that bad. A lot of people came a little bit late. This is a service that is full of a whole bunch of things with Memorial Weekend and graduation recognition and remembering those who have passed. We are dealing with the full range of our being a community of faith, and I'm glad that you are with us today. I'm going to read one additional 2 verses from Luke's Gospel in the 9th chapter, and the 57th and the 58th verses. But as they were going along the road, someone said to him, Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. May God add his blessing to our hearing of his word. This is always quite a weekend, Memorial Weekend, and we are remembering those who have passed on. It is also the unofficial beginning to summer, and we feel like summer could have started a lot earlier. It wouldn't have bothered any of us. And to look outside today is a source of great joy. It's a day of lots of travel. It's a day when I might not have been here if I wasn't preaching. I might have been in northwest Wisconsin in Hayward, just about a mile or so out of town on the Namakagon River, which is my mom's parents' old home place. It is as close to heaven or as close to a place that I have. You go down a narrow road with the tall pine trees when you see a rather undistinguishable house that is fairly normal, but you see no other houses around, and you walk up close to the house and you can see 300 feet of mowed land that comes right up to the edge of the river. There can be no more mowed land because it is inside the Wild Rivers Act, and that had been mowed by my grandpa some 40 years ago, and we could, as long as we keep doing it, you can have it mowed. And it is beautiful and peaceful. But I'm here, and I didn't come because anyone was forcing me to do it. I am here to worship as all of us are. What a weekend. What a weekend when we remember, when we may take pilgrimages to cemeteries and place flowers and flags on headstones of those who are gone. Cemeteries are special places, holy places. For the last 150 years, we haven't built many churches that build a cemetery right next to them. But there's something powerful about driving through the country and seeing a cemetery and a church, where they should be going together. The inability to understand all there is about life and death, but yet to honor the ones and to honor the relationship with God through Christ. Place is important. This place is important. I'm going to have some audience participation. How many of you have been living in your home for 25 years? Will you raise your hand? Okay, how about 40 years? How about 50 years? How about 60 years? Wow! Oh, do we have a 60 years? How about 61 years? That's close. Well, there was one that had 61 years at Halsey. There's something special about home, isn't it? There's something very special about that. And in no small sense, does that tie into our faith and to other things. Place is important because it molds who we are. And our home is important for all the memories that it has. This place here is important. There have been baptisms. There have been baptisms of your parents and grandparents. There have been baptisms of your children and grandchildren. There have been many of you and others that have been confirmed here. Some that were married here. Any who were married in this church? Yeah, I knew we'd get some of that. Wow. And I trust that's a sense of joy. What an experience. And there have been funeral services. They're either held here or certainly had funeral dinners. Times of saying goodbye and not having to say goodbye alone, but having to say goodbye with friends and family there with us. It is here, not the only place, but it is here where many of us have connected with God. And sometimes no one else knew what was going on other than God and you, and it was a time when you said to God, I'm ready to live in a different way. I thank you for what you've done in my life. We want to move right ahead. For some of you, at life's darkest times, you came in the door of this church and experienced God's grace and God's holding you in His arms as you moved on. In the darkest moments, God shone His light on the depths of your soul, and there was hope. Place is important. In an academic journal that I subscribe to, Christian Century, Wendy Murray Zoba, some 20 years ago, was to write an article summing up the life of Martin Marty. Martin Marty's a name I don't expect others to know, but he was a lifelong scholar at University of Chicago Divinity School. He was the editor of Christian Century for many years. And when this writer was going to sum up his life, she said, you don't really know Dr. Marty unless you know where he came from. Isn't that true of a lot of us? Where we have come from has a powerful impact on who we are and where we are now. Dr. Marty grew up on the plains of Nebraska. I share that history, but I only share about 6 months of it, or 7 months of it. My dad dropped out of college in religious studies because he was out of money, and took a very small church in Ely, Nebraska, which was 20, 30 miles from Valentine, and which none of those places are hardly a stop on the map. It was there where I was born in October, and it was there where my dad said you shoveled more sand off the porch than you did snow. It was there that my mother had a difficult time with my birth, probably because I was a problem, and life was pretty tough. In fact, my folks never talked about it until later years, and Dad said, well, there's a reason your mother doesn't understand much about what was happening there, because she was crying the whole time. Well, that can happen when you're taken 800 miles from home and all that goes with it. But Dr. Marty was on the plains of Nebraska for 14 years. And the writers say you'll only understand him if you get a sense of that experience of growing up on the plains, on the western plains of Nebraska. She said there's 3 words you got to understand about him. Simplicity. You learn to get by with what you have. There were no deliveries from Amazon. There was no running to the store for milk. You were miles and miles away, and you, first of all, got your grocery list figured out real quick with everything on it, because the trip of a few miles was something you didn't make more than once every couple of weeks. With simplicity, you learn to get by with what you have. A second, hard work. If you didn't do it, it was not going to get done. And if it didn't get done, there could be problems. There could be real serious problems. So you learn to work hard and creatively. And third, and to me, maybe most important, you grew up with an understanding of the vastness of creation. Big sky, big God, beyond our understanding. And you were able to wrestle with the big issues of life because you grew up with that, and that had a powerful impact. He went on to be a professor at the University of Chicago Divinity School in the middle of urban Chicago with all of its issues and plants. But yet, that sense of the greatness of God and God's creation lived on. Place is important. One scholar has said, "Tell me your landscape and I'll tell you who you are." He's talking about who you really are on the inside. There's something valuable about that. Place is important because it connects us to our experiences. Did you catch the sarcasm of Nathanael when his brother said, "Come and see the one that we have found"? This Jesus is just, he speaks and he speaks right to my heart. And Nathanael said, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" I think all of us, well, maybe not all of you, but I'll confess there's been a lot of times I've had that kind of sarcasm about people from different places. Can anything good come out of there? They didn't grow up like I did. Can anything good happen? And if you follow the gospel account, Nathanael would have a different answer years later. Place is important. Not just because if our football team wins, we can rub the nose of the next school over in it. There is something about how we experience life. In 1989, my grandmother passed away. Grandpa had died almost 20 years earlier. Dad was the executor of the estate and had to travel from Madison or Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and part of the time from Madison, to LaPorte City, Iowa, which was a little farming community about 15 miles out of Waterloo, and had all the responsibilities of being the executor of the estate. The last trip he made to LaPorte City in that, he met with the lawyer, he signed the papers, the estate was settled, and the money was doled out. And Dad said to the lawyer, "I assume that since I don't own the property today, it might not be entirely legal for me to go walk the farm, but I'm going to do it." And he walked out on that farm, that maybe 350-acre farm, a typical Iowa farm of that time where you milked 20 cows, you raised hogs, and you had chickens, and there was always some crop that was doing good, and there was always some that was doing bad, but you worked hard and you made a good life. He walked that farm. He walked out of the barn where he had milked cows before he went to school and after he got home. He walked by the pig pens where he had shoveled more stuff than he ever wanted to. He walked out to the feed lot. He walked to the woods where he learned to squirrel hunt. He walked to the pond where the cows would go to drink. He walked the fields where he had learned to drive a tractor. He walked the rest of the farm. My dad is not an emotional person. He's going to turn 94 in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But when he told this story to me, there was an awful lot of emotion in it. And why was that? Was this farm any more beautiful than any other? Was this farm any more prosperous than any others? No, but this farm connected to relationships. Relationships with his grandfather, or with his father, who was an incredibly hardworking and bright businessman. A connection with his mother, whose responsibility was not only to feed everyone, but was to take care of the chickens. He remembered all of those things. And though they were gone, they still burned a hole in his life. He shared going by the little Westland church some 3 miles away. He didn't say much about what that meant to him, but his getting choked up told you a lot about it. They were memories of land, they were memories of soil. It was emotional, and he held to it. Place connects to our experience. And the loss of place can be very real. This was not an easy thing for my dad to do. He was the last of the Bucks who was a farmer. The farm was sold, and it tied to everything the family was known for the generations before. How different that is from me. Dad went off to college when he was 19 with everything he owned in a suitcase, some money from Grandpa, and years later he graduated from college with a degree in theology and was a pastor for over 50 years. I experienced those early years as a sense of loss that came with parsonages. Because every time I would make friends, we would end up moving. Oh, and we moved and we moved. And then I became a Methodist minister, and we moved and we moved and we moved. And then in retirement, I moved and moved and moved. I added up the number of houses I have lived in, and it was 24. Maybe that's why I haven't been particularly close to an awful lot of people in my life, because in the back of my mind I think, as soon as I get close to you, the bishop's going to call and move me, or another church is going to call and move Dad, and we are very much how we grew up, and it impacts us. My alma mater in Marion, Indiana, was Marion College when I went there. Later it became Indiana Wesleyan University. It has grown significantly. Today it is the second largest private school in Indiana, following only Notre Dame. But then when I graduated, it had somewhere under 900 students. I got a notice, or read in one of the articles, the alumni thing, that they were tearing down Teeter Hall. Now, Teeter Hall was a building that was built when the college started in 1920 or 21. It was old, it was drafty, but it was the dorm that the second and third floors were dorm. The first floor was administrative offices with music department in the basement. And I was pretty upset. Because Teeter Hall, I don't care how bad it was and how much it cost to heat, it was where I started my college experience, and it was where I met friends, and it was important to me. And they tore it down in spite of my letter of protest. Well, a few years later, the college became a university. And word was out that they had bought 38th Street Park. Now, 38th Street Park was a typical small city park in north central Indiana. It had a basketball court that on a summer or spring or fall evening you would find all the way from college All-Americans to people trying to figure out what basketball was about playing there. It was a place that was interracial. There were a whole lot of good things about it, but the college needed it as a parking lot. I was not happy. But I've learned a lot about not being happy. You don't always get your way when you're not happy. They tore down 38th Street Park, and they made a parking lot out of it. What was so special about 38th Street Park? 38th Street Park was where my college roommate had a class assignment. He was in the religion department also, around doing a wedding, and he needed a couple to do the wedding. And his girlfriend had a roommate, and John said, "Why don't you and Susan come and get married on your first date?" Well, we did, and that was the beginning of a relationship. And why am I so identified with 38th Street? Because of the strength of relationship of now some 52 years. That is what happens emotionally to us. What's so special about some places? Places where we have gone through times of trial and times of hope. Places where joy has been important. Place is important. It ties us to those experiences. But place, more importantly, ties us to relationships. But as important as place is, as strong a role as place plays in forming us, as much as place connects us with experiences, relationship is more important than place. Relationship trumps place every time. As Christians, our identity is not in a place, but in a relationship. We may identify with this place, as important as it is, but in reality, as a Christian, it is not in a particular place, it is in the relationship with Jesus Christ. And when Jesus said to the would-be follower, "Come and follow me," he didn't say, "We're going to build a shrine." He said, "Come and follow me." Who you are is more important than where you are or where you've been. Those are both important, but who you are is significantly more important. I think of the Apostle Paul and Nelson Mandela, both of them thrown in jail. But they weren't different people when they were in jail than they had been before. Paul continued to lead churches by smuggling letters out, even though he was in jail. His voice could not be stifled. And Nelson Mandela was thrown in jail in South Africa and became a world life changer in the issue of how races looked at each other in South Africa. Who you are is more important than where you are or where you were from. Who you are with is more important than who you are. I remember some 20 or so years ago when the movie Titanic came out. And I thought it was good. I wasn't much of watching movies then, but I thought it was good. Maybe it was earlier than that. In the last part of the movie, when they hit the iceberg and the ship was going down, the director did a phenomenal job of showing the panic. People were running around and they were grabbing other people to get out of their way, and they even shooting other people, and they were getting on the life raft and pushing away so no one else would be saved other than them and theirs that were close to them. And there was just panic and loud noise and everything going on in the backdrop of hopelessness. Except for one couple, an elderly couple, who had dressed in their finest for a ballroom dancing evening and a great banquet. They knew they couldn't get off. They knew they weren't strong enough to. And they went to their stateroom, a large stateroom. And they climbed up in the bed with the finest clothes they had on. And they held hands with each other as the ship went down. That was not only a dramatic human story, but that says something about it's important who you are with. In the midst of the crisis, there was a calmness in knowing that they were together, and I would like to say that they knew that Christ was there with them. Place molds us. Place is important. It connects us with our experiences. Place connects us with our relationships. But as Christians, we find ultimate hope and reality in relationships. In our relationship with God, whom we know through Jesus Christ. To God be the glory.